There was an announcement in the newspaper that the devil was having a going out of business sale. And all of his tools would be lined up on tables, and they could be sold to whoever was willing to pay the devil's price. So the crowd came, they looked around, and upon the table, it was an attractive display and a bad-looking lot. Malice was there, hatred, envy, jealousy, sensuality, deceit. All the other implements of evil, they were marked and they were priced. And apart from all the rest, laid over on the side was a harmless-looking wedge-shaped tool. It was very worn. It was priced much higher than all the rest. And someone asked the devil, "What exactly is that wedge-shaped tool down there that looks so worn, and why is it so expensive?" He said, "That wedge-shaped tool, that's discouragement." He said, "Well, then why is it priced so much higher than all the rest?" He says, "Because it is so much more useful to me than all of the others. I can pry open and get inside a man's consciousness with this tool, when I could not get anywhere near him with any of the rest of those. And then once I'm inside, I can use him in whatever way suits me best. It's so worn because I use it with almost everybody, and very few people know that it belongs to me." It hardly needs to be said that the devil's price for discouragement was so high that it was never sold, so he still uses it today. Discouragement, a loss of confidence or enthusiasm. When you plan all year for a family campout, and come that weekend, it's 27 degrees and raining outside. Discouragement. When you've been waiting for that $20,000 Christmas bonus, and your boss gives you a subscription to the Jelly of the Month Club. Discouragement. When you spend 5 hours of your life following your great-grandmother's chocolate pie recipe down to the letter, and you take that first bite, it don't taste nothing like Mama's. Discouragement. When you play 5 sets of volleyball and lose to your arch rival by 2 points. Discouragement. Today we want to see why discouragement is such a spiritual distraction for us. If you have your Bible, turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. We're going to look at verses 1 through 10. 3 woes that lead us to discouragement. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 through 10. Number 1. We have the woes of delusion. A few weeks ago, we had our men's breakfast. And if you're unaware, about every other month or so, we have a men's breakfast in our fellowship hall. Good eats, great fellowship, worship, Bible study. It's a really, really good time. We want all you guys and sons and grandpas and aunts and their uncles want you to come and be plugged in. So I put it in my calendar because that helps me keep up with everything going on in the church. So I had it in my calendar, men's breakfast. It's going to start at 8:30, and so I knew that I needed to get up in time to be here. So I set my alarm for 8:18 because it doesn't take me long. I don't have to fix my hair or anything like that. Well, Pastor, don't you have to brush your teeth? Real men brush their teeth with bacon and sausage. Ruh, 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 ruh. So I got here at 8:32, and the scene that I usually see when I walk in is lots of guys standing around drinking coffee and orange juice. They have all the food laid out on the counter, and they're about to say the blessing and fix their plates. And yet this last men's breakfast I walked in, and everybody was sitting around the tables. They already had their plates. They'd already eaten. Some of them had already eaten seconds. And I thought, well, that was pretty rude. You know, I feel kind of left out. They started early, and nobody told me. So I walked over and says, "You guys must have started early today." They said, "No, we started right on time." I said, "It's 8:32. You're telling me that y'all fixed all y'all's plates and y'all have all eaten in 2 minutes." And they said, "No, men's breakfast starts at 8 o'clock. That is incorrect, sir. Because I pulled out my phone. I said, "Do you see my calendar right here?" On my calendar, it says men's breakfast, 8:30 a.m. Saturday morning. And they said, "Well, we hate to tell you this, Pastor, but your calendar is wrong." Oh, no, you didn't. The calendar is never wrong. The calendar is always right. And so I have this visual image in my mind. There's a paper on the door, and the door says it starts at 8:30. So I thought, I'm fixing to show all you people. So I go down the hallway, and I go up to the door, and there it is, right? Black and white. Men's breakfast, Saturday morning, 8. to 9:30 a.m. So I had to do the walk of shame back down the hallway. And I had to go in and sit down and say, y'all were right and I was wrong. Y'all are smart and I am not. And even though I saw it with my own eyes, you know what my first thought was? This is a trick. Somebody changed that paper. Because last week that paper said 8:30. I know it did. I saw it with my eyeballs. So somebody pulled that paper down. They put one up that said 8 o'clock after I saw it and put it in my calendar because the calendar is never wrong. I had this delusion, a false belief, but I believed it with all of my heart. I believed it started at 8:30. It's never started at 8:30. It's always started at 8 o'clock. But I believed it started at 8:30, and so I was under this delusion. Let us beware of the woes of delusion, which can lead us to discouragement. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 1. I must go on boasting. Though there is nothing to be gained by it, I will go on to visions and revelations of the Lord. So Paul's writing to the Corinthians, and he loves these people. He loves them like children in the faith. And Paul, very early in his ministry, discovered that when you try to be a light in a world of darkness, or when you try to be truth in a world full of lies, you will find yourself with great opposition in this world. And now the opposition has wiggled its way into the church. And so they are trying to tell the people there that Paul shouldn't be listened to, that he is not trustworthy. How do we even know that he is an apostle? Could he really be giving us information that is helpful to us? I don't even think we need to listen to what he has to say. And one of the methods that these opposers would use when people would come in and they would speak and they would teach is they would list their credentials. So they would stand up and they would say, well, listen, I've been to this school and I've sat under this theologian and I've experienced these things in my life and I've seen these visions and I've had these victories, and they would lay it all out there and they would boast about themselves to say, and this is why you can know that what I say is right and good and is true. And so now Paul writes about boasting. If there's anything that Paul hates, it's boasting. He can't stand arrogance or humility. And yet he sees that this is the way these guys play this game. They have to stand up. They're saying, so Paul, who are you? Why would we listen to you? What credentials do you have? Tell us about yourself so that we know truly we can listen and trust what you have to say. And so Paul says, okay, I'll play your game. Let's move on to visions and revelations. I'll tell you about those. Verse 2. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And I know that this man was caught up into paradise. Whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And he heard things that cannot be told, which man may not utter. So I know a man. Even in his boasting, Paul can't boast about himself. So he says, I know this guy, and he looks a lot like me. He talks like me. We have the same birthday and the same haircut and the same eye color, the same DNA, the same mom and dad. We like the same foods. We listen to the same music. I know this guy. And 14 years ago, he was caught up into the third heaven, somewhere between 42, 44 AD, prior to his first missionary journey. The third heaven refers to, the first heaven would be the earth and the atmosphere. The second heaven would be the space, the planets, all those things that are interstellar. The third heaven, that's where God abides. And so he says he was caught up to the third heaven. Whether in the body or in the spirit, I don't know. God knows. But he saw things and he heard things that the mouth cannot even utter or speak about. Now, what Paul experienced, that was not a delusion. That was not something that was fake. It's something that he imagined. He didn't eat some bad cactus and then just have this vision. God took him to the third heaven. In the body and the spirit, I don't know, and Paul doesn't know either. God knows, but he went there. But here's this great delusion that we so often have. All of his opponents are using their platform to stand up and give all these reasons to everyone else why they are so great, so knowledgeable, so experienced, why they should be trusted. They're talking about visions, they're talking about their experiences, they're talking about their victories, and they are doing everything they can to make themselves look good. This is the toot your own horn of all toot your own horn circumstances. And here's the delusion that we so often have, that it should be our absolute goal in this life to make ourselves look good in front of others and the world. And that will always lead us to distraction and discouragement. Verse 5. On behalf of this man, this guy that I know who's a lot like me, I will boast. But on my own behalf, I will not boast except of my weaknesses. Though, if I should wish to boast, I would not be a fool, for I'd be speaking the truth. But I refrain from it, so that no one may think more of me than he sees in me or hears from me. So on behalf of this man, which is Paul, I can boast upon him, but I will not boast on my own behalf, except in my weaknesses. But if I did want to boast, I got some stories that would knock your socks off. But I'm not going to do that. And so instead, I'm going to refrain, because I don't want anybody to think of me in any other way except what he sees or hears from the way that I live my life. Two things. Number one, I think about the one-up challenge. So tell me if you have ever heard this conversation, or maybe you have been a part of this conversation. You're standing out by the fire. It's a group of guys. They're talking and enjoying. They say, hey, you never believe what I did. Last month, I put my ribs in the county-wide barbecue competition, and I won second place and $500. Can you believe that? I knew my ribs were good, but I didn't know they were that good. And so another man stands up and goes, well, man, that is so great. I happened to enter my brisket in the statewide competition, and I got first place and won $5,000 and a new barbecue pit. Two women are standing. Maybe they're at the nail salon or the grocery store. They say, oh, you'll never believe last week we got our kitchen redone. Brand new countertops all around. Flew them in from Brazil. It only cost us $25,000. It looks amazing. Oh, that's great. We actually just redid our bathroom and flew everything in from Italy, but it only cost us $55,000. Well, I had to put a new engine in the old Mustang, so I did a little shopping around. I found me one with 455 horsepower. Oh, that must be nice, taking your grandma for a ride. Because I just happened to put a new engine in my Camaro with 555 horsepower. I've been doing so good looking online. And you'll never believe this, but I've done all my Christmas shopping. I have finished absolutely every gift that I have to buy. I bought it online, saved 50% on every gift, and got free shipping. I did that this year too. But somehow I saved 75% off of all my gifts, got free shipping and gift wrapping. See, we have this great delusion in the world that our goal in this life is to not just keep up with the Joneses, it's to outdo the Joneses. And so we have the one-up challenge. So we buy things that we can't afford. We take risks that are unnecessary. We lie about what really happened so that we can convince others that what we have or what we did or what we can do is better than everyone else, and we want to impress with a capital I. And this delusion will bring you nothing but woes. Because the truth is that you can't always have the best barbecue. I don't care what your wife says. You are not going to have the nicest kitchen or the bathroom in Lavernia. Your car will not have the most horsepower, and you will not be the first one done with your Christmas shopping, nor will you save the most money. This quest will always leave you distracted because it takes your eyes off of Christ. And it will always leave you discouraged because you are fighting a losing battle. And every time that you hear somebody else talking about their experience, their adventure, their talent, or their purchase, you will want to outdo them and impress them, and you can't. So where does that leave you? Discouraged. Second thing is I think about the show, don't tell challenge. Notice what Paul says. All of you are standing here and you're talking about just how great and how wonderful you are. I will not do that, even though I could. I could tell y'all some things that you would absolutely not believe, but I am not going to do that. Instead, I am going to be validated, not in what I tell you, but in what I have done and in how I have lived for the Lord, and that will be the proof of who I am. 2 Corinthians 3, 1 and 2. Are we beginning to commend ourselves again? Or do we need, as some do, these letters of recommendations to you or from you? You yourselves are our letter of recommendation, written on our hearts to be known and read by all. Paul says, you are the proof of how I have lived my life. So stop trying to impress everybody else in this world. It's not about how well you can build yourself up or how good you can make yourself look. Instead, try this on for size. Live a faithful life. Be obedient. Serve. Love. Forgive. Show grace. Sacrifice. It's not just what you say, it's what you do. There's an old story, and I've used it here before, but its point is the same. Two friends are standing outside, and one says, I'm about to go to Israel, and I'm going to climb up on the top of Mount Sinai, and I'm going to read the 10 Commandments as loudly as I can. What could ever please the Lord more than that? And his neighbor said, I know one thing. If you just stay right here in town and actually obey them. It's real easy to stand there and proclaim them, but what is your life saying? If you want to fight for focus, you have to realize that the delusion of this life is we live to impress other people. That will always lead you to discouragement. So be much less concerned with impressing others with your words and be much more concerned with showing your commitment to Christ by the way that you live in and out of every day. Number 2, we have the woes of defeat. I read an article this week, and I got a picture here to show you. And these two guys are standing next to each other. And it looks just like a happy picture, maybe a father and a son or two friends. And they're on a trip, and you can see the Golden Gate Bridge standing there behind them. And the purpose of this video is these two guys, they're not related. They don't even know each other. But they have one thing that they share in common. And for the man on the left, it happened in 1985. For the man on the right, it happened in the year 2000. And what they have in common is that they are of the 1% to have ever lived who have tried to end their life by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge and actually survived. So say when you jump off that bridge, you hit the water at 75 to 80 miles per hour. Somewhere between 1,600 and 2,000 people have taken their life by jumping off this bridge, and they say 99% have succeeded in their goal. So these two men, they met, and they're on a journey together now to speak to other men, because here's something else that they have in common. They said that before they jumped off that bridge, they both had these same feelings, that I have no worth, I have no value, that this world would be better, and that my family would be better if I didn't exist anymore. But then they said when they left that railing and they started to fall, immediately they only had one emotion, and it wasn't peace, it wasn't success, it wasn't contentment, it wasn't confirmation, it wasn't relief. The one feeling they felt as soon as they left the edge was regret. This was not the right decision. And so now they go and they try to teach other people that there's another way, that you don't have to end your life. There is another way, because they've experienced that, and they want other people to see that truth too. What Paul's trying to show us is that so often when we are defeated and we are discouraged and we are depressed, we want to give up. And so he says there is another way. Verse 7. So, to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. So now Paul, he lets go of the third person. It's no longer I know this guy. He says, the Lord gave me something. He says, I've had these revelations, I've had these visions. I've had all these experiences supernaturally with the Lord, and it would be very easy for me to build myself up and to become greatly conceited. And so the Lord has given me a thorn in my flesh, literally a stake in my flesh. And there's much speculation about what this is. Some would say it is a psychological struggle that he has over the fact that when he began his ministry to rid the world of Christians, he killed them and he had them tortured and thrown in prison. He just can't let go of that, and it tortures him over and over and over. Some say it's a psychological struggle that he has about Israel's unbelief. How could they not believe in this Christ who loves me so? Some would say that the thorn in the flesh are his opponents, that he always has. No matter where he goes or what he does, there's somebody always out to get him, trying to attack him, trying to have him killed, trying to have him thrown in prison. And so he always has this opposition. It is a thorn. Others say it is a physical ailment. So maybe he has trouble with his eyes and his eyesight. Maybe it is a fever or a headache that he has from malaria, or even that it could be a migraine type headache. Others will say this is a demonic harassment, that there is a demon that is always there, that is after him, discouraging him, tempting him, fighting him. Whatever it be, mental, physical, or spiritual, he says, God placed this in my life. He put it here for a reason. And so I pled with him 3 times. It reminds us of Jesus pleading in Mark 14. And going a little further, he fell on the ground and he prayed that if it were possible, that the hour might pass from him. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. 3 times I pleaded, I begged, and I asked, I reasoned, and then I stopped praying, because after 3 times I knew that God had answered my prayer. Many of you today have a thorn, or maybe you have thorns in your flesh. And maybe it's a constant physical pain that you will have to endure the rest of your life as long as you are breathing here on this earth. Maybe it's an emotional struggle from a past experience. Maybe it's an attacker or a persecutor who is relentless and will not stop. Maybe it's temptation or trial or spiritual warfare, regret, depression, distraction, discouragement, or unforgiveness. And many of you have pled with the Lord and asked him to take it away. And for some of you, God said yes. For others of you, he said not yet. And sometimes God says no, because this has a purpose and a place in your life. So how do we fight for focus? How do we keep pressing on when the suffering is too much, when the struggle is too hard, when the discouragement is overwhelming? Number 3, we must be aware of the woes of deception. Verse 9. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I pleaded with God, please, Lord, take this away. And here was God's response. It was not, I will do it. It was not absolutely. It was not just a little bit longer. God simply said, my grace is sufficient for you. Remember last week Jesus talked to us about worry, and he said, tomorrow has plenty of things to worry about all in itself. But know this, that God will give you just enough grace to make it through today. And then tomorrow, he'll give you just enough grace to make it through tomorrow. And he'll do it the next day and the next day. Because his grace is sufficient. It is always just the right amount. And his power is made perfect in our weakness, which means that God shines in the midst of our pain and our failure. So Paul says, I will boast. Yes, I will boast, but not in the things that I can do. Instead, I will boast in my weaknesses. You boast in your success, your achievements, and your accomplishment, and I'll boast in my weakness, because that's when the power of Christ rests on me. So I'll be content in weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities, because when I am strong, when I am weak, the power of God gives me strength. The woe of deception leads us to believe this. In this life, we should never suffer because hardships have no positive outcomes for us. And yet Paul says that it's during the hardest times of our life that we realize that God is our strength, that his power is our hope, and that we have nothing, and that he is our everything. The world would have us believe the deception of this life is that when life is hard and you feel defeated, then that means God's mad at you. He doesn't like you and he is punishing you. When instead, Paul says it simply means that God is refining us and molding us, and we have no reason to question his love or his goodness. Romans 8:38, for I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. The deception of the world says that when we suffer, when we are hurt, and when we are defeated, we should ask God to take it away. Lord, take my pain and give me pleasure. Take my sickness and give me health. Take my slavery and give me freedom. Yet Wiersbe says we should not pray for substitution. Instead, we should pray for transformation. Don't ask for God to take it away. Ask God to change you through it, because we know that God is working out all things for good, regardless of our circumstance. His grace is always sufficient. Every year when our church sends a team to India, one of the greatest tools that they have to teach the Indian people is to either have a picture, a painting, an object lesson, something tangible that the people can see, that they can understand, they can make a point, and they can remember. So a few weeks ago, one of our India team members, they sent this while they were there, and they said, look, today, here's the painting that we used to teach the Indian people. So I saw it, and I looked at it. I'm going to be honest, I was feeling pretty discouraged because I didn't really know what this person thought they were painting or what this was supposed to be. It looks kind of like an ultrasound to me, maybe. And so I said, Lord, open my eyes and help me to see, because I want to be encouraging, because it was, hey, look at this painting we used today. And I was thinking, I have no idea what that is. So I know for sure those Indian people have no idea. So I can just imagine them talking back and forth going, what in the world is this person doing? Because what they are painting makes no sense to me at all. So I was discouraged, and I was a little depressed. And I was thinking, man, that is not, I don't think, the intention of our India team. And a few minutes later, they sent another message. And they said, oh, yeah, by the way, we forgot to tell you, this is the picture upside down. Here's what it looks like right side up. Oh. Now, some of you are going, I still don't see it, Pastor. So in the middle, over towards the right middle is the nose. Look down and there's the mouth. The top left is an eye. And it's a perfect picture of the face of maybe what we think Jesus looks like. Keep looking at it. It'll come to you in a few minutes. If not, see me after church. I'll show you a picture. I'll point it to you. I didn't see it at first either. Somebody had to point it to me, and I go, oh, look at that. I know it. I left it in my office. If I had my laser pen, I could show you. And so I was so discouraged because I saw the picture upside down, and it didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But then when you turn the picture right side up, it makes complete sense. And see, one of the reasons that we get so discouraged in this life is because we are seeing things upside down or inside out. And yet God sees them perfectly clear. When we have woes of delusion, we have to know that the world would say, live to impress everybody else. And that will always lead you to discouragement. So instead, live for the Lord, and that will lead you to joy. We have these woes of defeat, feeling like the attacks and the pains and the sufferings, they're just too much to bear. We feel so discouraged, when instead we should know that God is with us and we will persevere. And then we have these woes of deception. believing that our circumstances determine our attitude, which leads us to discouragement. And instead, we must know that our Savior and our salvation determine our outlook, which leads us to confirmation and contentment. But too often we look at this life from the wrong perspective, and we only see what we think we know or what we believe we understand. So instead, we need to trust that God sees all things perfectly. So we need to stop being distracted by discouragement, and we need to start fighting for focus. And here's where it starts: in the very midst of the pain and the hardship and the struggles, the delusions, the defeats, and the deception, we just need to remember that Jesus tells us, "My grace is sufficient for you."